I just want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being part of this program today. My name is Tina Hogan, and I'm the Community Outreach Specialist here at Gear Village Senior Community. We wish that we could do this in person, but we're going to be safe and cautious, so we've decided to just do a Zoom webinar tonight for this presentation. Again, just to let everybody know, put your questions in the chat or the Q&A so that at the end, we're going to hold off with the questions and we will be presenting all of those questions to Kristen at the end. So to get started, Gear Village, what we focus on here is what really matters, and it's caring for our family and our friends and our neighbors in the northwest corner of Connecticut. Our residents, family, employees, and management, and the board of directors focuses on what we think is best for life here in our community. Our services at Gear Village Senior Community include independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, outpatient physical therapy, pharmacy, dial-a-ride, and what's very unique to Gear is that we have a wellness program which empowers and supports ongoing education and wellness so everyone can live their life to the fullest. In addition, you will add to, in addition to our services, you will also find the Canaan branch of the Northwestern Connecticut YMCA here on our campus. So be on the lookout. We have a lot of exciting things coming up. So we're going to have programs and presentations that we hopefully will be doing hybrid, but we will continue to offer this Zoom link so we can make sure that these presentations get to everybody who can benefit from them. So now I want to introduce you to Kristen Casado. Kristen has spent more than 20 years on TV. Some of you actually may recognize her because she was a Channel 8 news anchor. In 2009, Kristen's mom was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. That changed a lot for Kristen. Kristen works for the Connecticut chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, and she shares what she learned as a caregiver, and she teaches people about this disease. She is the director of communications for the chapter, and her goal is to raise awareness and share her hits and misses as a caregiver in hope that her story can make your journey just a little bit easier. If you want to learn more about Kristen's individual journey, she's also featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Navigating Elder Care and Dementia. So now I introduce my friend, Kristen Casado.
Thank you, Tina. That was amazing. I appreciate it so much. And thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you to Gear. I am going to share my screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Stacy, maybe you can give me the power back so I can share my screen. See if that works. There we go. All right. Can you guys all see that? Give me a thumbs up or let me know, Tina or Stacy.
We're all good.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, I would like to start off by sharing with you what the symbol means. This is the symbol that you see on a lot of different things that we have. It's in our logo. It's part of our logo, and it really means people and science. It's the brain and the beaker. So as we take care of people who have this disease and as we help caregivers and families, we also are really furthering science. And a lot of what you're going to hear today is a lot about what's happening in the research field to really push this forward to get to the place where we have new treatments and more preventive measures and eventually, hopefully, a way to cure this disease. Every March, we have some new facts and figures that come out in the spring of every year, and it really talks about the new stats, the new numbers that are happening. And right now, we have more than 6 million Americans that are living with Alzheimer's in the United States. And we have 80,000 here in Connecticut. 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. It is a disease that really, and many of you who are watching are involved in this right now, it is taxing emotionally, physically, and financially as well. It's extraordinarily expensive, going to cost the nation $355 billion. So these are just kind of level set to show some of the stats and what's going on in that regard. This is just to also, some of you already know this. I just want to go over it for those of you who don't. Explain the difference, because oftentimes you hear those two terms. You hear dementia and Alzheimer's. What's the difference between the two? So dementia, we use it as the umbrella term. That is the symptoms. Dementia is what the person experiences, okay? They experience this cognitive or behavioral issues. Dementia is what they experience, the symptom of saying the same thing over and over again, right? Not realizing they told the same story 4 times in an hour, getting lost coming home from the grocery store, somewhere they've been for so long, not sure, having the keys in your hand, not losing your keys, but having the keys and not sure what they do. So dementia is kind of what you experience. Now, down below on this graph, you'll see that Alzheimer's, which is a disease, Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia. So Alzheimer's causes dementia, as does vascular dementia, as does Lewy body, which Tina was talking about. That's the type that my mother had. Frontotemporal, mixed. But Alzheimer's is the most common type, and that's why you hear those two terms interchangeably. What does the disease do? It is a progressive disease. It is a fatal disease, and it causes the changes in the brain. Now, let's talk about risk factors of this disease. Age is the greatest risk factor. Okay, most of the folks who are diagnosed with this disease are over the age of 65. But as you may know, many people are being diagnosed in the 50s, 60s range, some people in their 40s, a little more rare. Those folks are called younger onset, in that it's hitting them younger than when most of the other folks are hitting. So age, as we get older, right? Age is our greatest risk factor. There is a small genetic part. If we do have a certain gene, we are at a greater risk. Does not necessarily mean that we will get that disease. Race and ethnicity. Interesting, we find that Black African Americans are 2 times as likely to get dementia, and Latinos, Hispanic Latinos, are 1.5 times as likely to have this disease. Why? What we know in part is that some of those folks present with more issues in the cardiac situation or with diabetes, which can also be as far as risk factors increasing. So those are the things we can't control. Those are called non-modifiable. What can we modify over to the right? Let's talk about this. And we're excited because there's more and more that we know now, that some of the lifestyle things that we can do now can reduce our risk of cognitive decline later. So some of the environmental lifestyle factors, cardiovascular, right? Taking care of your heart. We always say that everything good for your heart is good for your brain. The amount of physical activity that you do, the amount of sleep. Sleep is so crucial. Sleep, when you sleep, it actually washes away some of the toxins in your brain. So sleep is very important. Social cognitive engagement, which I'll talk a little bit more about. The amount of education that you have. Some say there might be a cognitive reserve if people have additional education or have multiple languages, for example. And of course, something you can do is protect your head, for example, traumatic brain injury. Make sure you wear a helmet when you're biking, that kind of thing. But we absolutely need to study dementia from all of these angles. And that is what we're doing. So we are very, very focused on research, and it's happening. We don't just fund research in the United States, we fund it all across the globe. So literally at any given moment, there's research happening. In fact, we're the largest nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's and dementia research in the entire world. At present, we have more than $235 million funding 650 active projects in 39 countries. So we don't really, it doesn't matter to us if it's happening, if we're funding in the US or we're funding in Italy or funding somewhere else. We just want the best minds to come up with new ideas for us to get closer to those treatments and closer to that cure. I talked about what's happening globally, but here's what's happening here in Connecticut. We are lucky here in Connecticut that we have $2.2 million of research funding coming right into our state at places like Yale, UConn Health, UConn Stores. And I could tell you that, for example, We're funding a professor down at Yale who is also doing some research on what types of dementia that are not quite as common, that present with some visual changes or some language changes. So she's having research funding dealing with that. Someone at UConn Health is looking at the comparison and how depression or apathy actually affects Alzheimer's and dementia. And we're doing it through brain imaging. There's someone at UConn Stores who's getting further into the biology of the disease and really looking at the brain as we get closer and closer to coming up with a potential blood test as a way to determine if we have this disease. And I'll talk about that in a little while as well. So really across the range of different kinds of things that were happening and researching here in Connecticut. It's very exciting. And we are going towards more effective treatments and interventions. Now, every July, we have something called the Alzheimer's Association International Conference. And this is happening. It happened mostly virtual this year, but there's a small in-person part in Denver. And there were so many things that came out of it. What's exciting about AAIC is that the greatest minds in research from across the globe come together to share. Now, here's something that's also interesting. Those of you who know anything about research, when you're funded by the Alzheimer's Association, you are super transparent and open book. So when you're funded, you need to share your data. So it's not like we're giving them the money and in 3 to 5 years, we'll check in and see how it's going. No, it's sharing data so that maybe that data can help someone else's study. So it's really, really fascinating that everyone is working together. And some of the key findings that came out, some of the key interesting things that came out of this year's AAIC was this air pollution and Alzheimer's risk. Now, we've known for a number of years that air pollution, not only bad for our lungs, is also not good for the plaques. They're called plaques and tangles that are in the brain of an Alzheimer's person, someone with Alzheimer's. And air pollution buildup has been linked to additional that. But now we also know that as the air quality increases, the dementia risk decreases. And you can see over to the side, I know it's kind of tiny fonts there, but we found out that there was a reduction in dementia risk in women, looking at this fine particulate matter. Also, that's just not only traffic related pollutants, but other things in the air. If the air quality is improved, then we had a lower risk of dementia. So that's something environmental, right? That goes in the environmental list that we were talking about. Here's something else. A lot of research into COVID. Now, when COVID first started happening last year, our first Alzheimer's Association International Conference that happened in July, we, not only the Alzheimer's Association, but 40 different countries banded together and put some resources towards looking at how is COVID going to affect our long-term cognition? How is it going to affect our brains? So right now, there is definite studies going on. And in the first year, here's what we found. Interesting. You know, we talk about isolation, right? How it was so challenging. And let's cross our fingers that we don't have to go back into that, right? That among adults 75 and older, if you increased by just an hour a week of texting or emailing friends or some FaceTiming, it will associate with a 32% decrease of low mood. So we know, just proving, right, that the social engagement is so important to us, but also showed that there was a study done over 6 months of 300 adults from Argentina who had COVID-19 and found that 6 months later, half of them had some forgetfulness, half of them had some memory issues, and a quarter of them had some cognition, understanding issues. So what does that mean? That means we're continuing to study, but more research is needed. Does it mean that if you get COVID, you're on your way to getting dementia? No. But if there are some lingering and definite some memory concerns post-COVID, definitely call your doctor. Definitely reach out and try to investigate that for yourself. Now, this is very exciting. We have had over the years, see, these are the names of some of the drugs, right, that have been approved by the FDA for Alzheimer's disease. And most of these drugs, if say from 1996 to 2014, these are drugs that treat these symptoms, right, the behaviors, et cetera. Aricept, Exelon, Namenda. You may have, if you're in this right now, have heard of some of these names. Now, for the very first time, the FDA has approved just a few months ago a drug that can actually change the course of the disease. You may have heard of it. It was aducanumab before it was approved, found the fast track by the FDA. Now it's called Aduhelm. Aduhelm is a drug that actually removes some of those plaques that we were talking about in the hopes of buying people more time, giving people more time at a plateau, at a stasis area where they can have more memories, right? They could spend more time. It's almost slowing the course of the disease. It's not really reversing anything. It's kind of giving more time. So the interesting thing about this, yes, it's been controversial because of the fact that multiple things, but in addition to the fact that it's quite expensive, and they're working with Medicare and working with insurance companies to try to get it covered, because we as the Alzheimer's Association believe that everyone should have access to this drug who needs this drug. Okay. This is also for people in the early stages of the disease, right? So what has to happen is people have to have a PET scan, which is a little more invasive than an MRI, to actually see, right? You physically have, the doctors and radiologists have to see those plaques and those changes in the brain before you are approved for this drug. Also, this drug is an infusion drug once a month. So we're learning more and more about how this is coming to be, but also just want to share with you that it's the first one, okay? It is the first one, and there are other drugs in the pipeline now. So 2, 3, 5 years, there may be others that do a similar thing that also affect and change the trajectory of the disease. And that's what we're excited about, is that we are finally to the point where we have something that is going to be able to change this disease, and we're going to keep going. Okay, so that's very exciting. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that I was saying, how we now know things and ways that we can act and make some changes to reduce our own risk. A couple of years ago, for the first time, we found out that if we, it's called the Sprint Mind Study, if you want to look that up, we found out that the Sprint Mind Study showed that if you reduce your blood pressure to not 140, but 120 systolic, it reduces your risk of dementia. So let's keep going. Let's look at other lifestyle things. Is there something we can do with the amount of physical activity? Is there something with cognitive and social stimulation? How about diet? And there are studies going on all these things, you guys, the amount of physical activity. There was a study done here on the shoreline not too long ago that had folks with early dementia, say earlier stages, or here's a term I'm not sure if you're aware of, MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment, which is doesn't quite affect as many of your daily activities. And MCI doesn't mean you're going to get dementia, but it's kind of earlier memory issues. So they had folks hop on a treadmill X number of days, X number of weeks to reduce their risk. Healthy diet, there are Mind diet, Mediterranean diet, look those up as well. There are a lot of studies going on to find out more about what kind of lifestyle changes we can do. In fact, there's a study that we as the Alzheimer's Association are funding and running called the US Pointer Study. It is happening right now. They're recruiting at, as you can see over to the right, 5 different sites across the country. The one closest to us would be in Rhode Island. And what they're doing is they're seeking about 2,000 people across the country, ages 60 to 79, with suboptimal lifestyles. You can probably figure out what that means. They may not have very much exercise at all. They may be pre-diabetic or diabetic. Maybe they have some sort of aspect that increases their risk where they smoke, for example. So these folks have suboptimal lifestyles. It's a 2-year study, and what's going to happen is they're going to incorporate those things I was just talking about in these folks' lives. So there's going to be a certain amount of exercise that they do every week. There is going to be a certain diet they're going to be suggested to do, some of the Mind and Mediterranean diet. Some of those things you may have heard because they're also talked about as far as cardiac and brain, cardiac health. And those kind of things are salmon for the omega-3s, blueberries for antioxidants, good fats like avocados and olive oil. Those kinds of things are in those kind of diets. Another thing is they're going to incorporate certain amounts of cognitive and social stimulation. Now, obviously, due to COVID, probably not doing it in person yet, but there's going to be, Zooms and calls and FaceTimes, and they're going to have, be able to answer things on a computer and do some sort of, quizzes. And then the fourth thing is more regular wellness checks. So they're going to see the doctor more often to check on things like your blood sugar and your blood pressure. So after 2 years, we're going to take a look and we're going to see how their dementia risk has decreased. Now, the US Pointer study is not coming out of the blue. This is based off of something called the finger study. Get it? Pointer finger. So finger was done in some of the European countries, and it was similar to this, looking at these lifestyle interventions and incorporating them, and they had a real positive effect. But in those particular countries that it was mostly done in white people. So what's happening now is US Pointer is opening up to be able to include all people of color and making sure that we look at, as I mentioned earlier, some of the people of color who have the greater risk factors, like Black African Americans and Latinos. So keep your eye on the US Pointer study. It's fascinating. There's another study that we are funding called the IDEAS study. Now, this study, okay, is looking at your brain, live brain, all right? And we as the Alzheimer's Association, we're early adopters, and we're really involved in sharing the idea of the fact that PET scans of live brains can show you those changes, right? So now the thing with a PET scan is it's not covered by insurance. So the IDEA study in part was like, let's show that if you do in fact do a PET scan and early on you find that this is a change in your brain, will that affect your care? Will that affect your care management? And we found in the IDEA study that in fact, 2/3 of the people who had, we know earlier, this is the point of early diagnosis, folks. We know earlier that they're having these changes. They do have better care management as a result of this. So now we've moved on to something called the new IDEA study, which is incorporating people of color as well and continuing to look at these details so that we can hopefully incorporate PET scans into diagnostic tools and having them covered. Now, here's something that's very, very exciting. And you might have listened that I mentioned this earlier when I talked about some of the folks who are funded by us in Connecticut. We are getting closer and closer for a blood test as a biomarker, not necessarily as the only way you'll be able to say, yes, you have this disease or not, but another tool in the toolkit, okay? If you think back in the day, well, first of all, years ago, we weren't even sure what this disease was, right? Some people would call it senility. Oh, grandma's got the senility. She's going to be in the back room. We're going to feed her a couple times a day, turn the TV on. That's not happening. That's not what's happening, right? It's not senility. It's some type of dementia. And how can we have these people live really active quality lives? So things have changed in that regard. But there were only certain ways we determine that this is for sure. And one way is on autopsy, right? So it was like a symptomatic diagnosis. Oh, all these symptoms that sound like you have this disease, but we only know on autopsy. But now we have graduated to, look, what we're just talking about, looking in a live brain, seeing these changes, okay? And we also know, here's another thing to throw out. We know that changes in the brain can happen 15 to 20 years before any symptoms occur. More reasons to have these lifestyle interventions and incorporate them into your life. So blood tests, this is something that they're hoping within 2 to 5 years, you will be able to walk into the doctor's office and you will be able to have this blood test, which will show, yes, you have a certain amount of amyloid protein, amyloid or those plaques in your blood. And then we know you're at a greater risk for this disease. So we are moving closer and closer to this. There was just a new study about this today, confirming a certain type. I won't bore you with what kind it is, but it's a p-tau 117, I believe. So we're learning more and more about this aspect of getting a blood test. And wouldn't that be quite amazing? So right now, there is no blood test that's been approved by the FDA, but we're working on it. So how does all this research happen? Well, it really is up to you and I. You can't really push research forward unless you have people getting involved, right, in clinical trials. Now, here's something interesting. We have something called Trial Match. It is the association's clinical matching service. It's free. You put in your information. So I'm 50 years old. My mother had the disease. I live in this town. And up pops a list of potential trials that you could be involved in. Your information is never given out. It is up to you to reach out to these researchers. Okay, so it's not like you put it in and it gets sent. You're not going to get random emails from someplace saying they want you for a trial. It's up to you. So you can reach out and say, I want more information about that. They'll have a conversation and then you decide if it's something you want to do. Now, you're saying to me, if I don't have dementia, why would I get involved? Because it's not just for those with dementia. Trial Match is for people who are healthy, people who may have parts of the MCI, which is that mild cognitive impairment, people who have no memory issues or some memory issues, people who have dementia, people who are caregivers, people who are daughters and sons of parents who have had it or siblings. What I'm saying to you is there are many different aspects of our society that can get involved in clinical trials. I will share that I myself got involved in a clinical trial, and it was to aid a researcher to get a healthy cohort and data from healthy brains. So when she finds something that she's studying, she can compare the data from the people with dementia to the healthy brain, because you kind of need that healthy brain cohort. So what I did, and it was so fascinating, and I wanted to do something in honor of my mom. My mom passed away 4 years after she was diagnosed. She was diagnosed, Tina said, in 2009 at the age of 61. So she was one of those younger onset, and she passed away at 65. And so this is why I'm involved in the Alzheimer's Association. That's why I work for them, but also getting involved in research to push things forward. So I went in and I did a couple of hour and a half or 2 hour sessions of cognitive testing. And then I also went in for an MRI that took about 2 hours. And that was it. That was my participation. So what they learned was they've got some data from me, so from the so-called healthy brain. What other people can do is anything from answering questions once a quarter online to having an MRI being, in part of a trial, to, there's other things like more exercise, or going all the way to being part of this, drug trial, experimental drug, which they also need to do on folks for the safety considerations. So there's lots of different options. I just really encourage you to get to do it. It's something that you can do. As many of you know, when you are involved with this disease and when you're caring for someone, you feel helpless. You can't fix your person, right? But maybe you can do something for someone else. And also to, think about your people, your loved ones who have the disease. If they're early on, they may be able to push research forward and be involved in a clinical trial as well. So check that out, alz.org/trial match. I do want to share some of the things that we have as the Alzheimer's Association for you. We have a 24/7 helpline. So this helpline you can call, like I said, any time of the day or night. It's right on your screen there, 800-272-3900, and maybe somebody can put it in the chat as well. And this line is for anything. Hey, I need a neurologist in the Torrington area. Or, hey, I'm kind of concerned about my own memory. To, it's 3 a.m. and my mom is at the door with her bag packed. She wants to go home, and we're home. How do I distract her? What do I do with this one? So it's all sorts of different things. It's not just an emergency. It's to call to say, hey, my family just got a diagnosis and I don't know where to start. And what they would do is they would have folks come in, or you meet on the phone. Well, if we were in office right now, we're still not in offices right now due to COVID. You have a phone call or you have a Zoom, and you have a literal care consultation where they walk you through and we guide you through. That line is also available in 200 different languages. So we just encourage you to call that if you need it. We also want to let you know that we have free education classes, which is what we're doing right now. And we have support groups, 90 support groups. and all are virtual right now. So go to alz.org to find out more information about that. And what's really important to realize is that we do all this for free thanks to money raised by things like the walk, things like donations, right? The money that people donate and the money that people raise on the walk to end Alzheimer's goes to not only this care and support we're talking about, but also goes to the research to push things forward. I think I'm going to invite Tina back on to talk a little bit about the walk, which is coming up in your area, not too far away.
Can you guys see me? Having a little technical difficulty.
I can hear you.
Okay, but you can't see me? That could be a good thing. For some reason, I'm not able to get back on. Just so everybody knows, the Northwest Corner, this is a great event that's being held at Lime Rock Park. Gear Village Senior Community is a great supporter of this walk. We're doing, we have a large team here at Gear. We really encourage all of you to get involved. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to myself and I can get you the information. But this is really what makes these webinars possible, and getting Kristen's caliber, you know, the knowledge that she has, and all of this being free, and that helpline and the support groups, they're all free based on what we can do here at the walk. So I do encourage you, if you want more information, you want to learn how to sign up, you can contact me at Gear at 860-824-3819.
What's great about the Lime Rock Park is that you can actually be on the track. So if you've never been on the track before, we're going to walk on the track. And then there's
you can also bring your bicycle this time. You can bike around the track. So there's a lot of great stuff coming up.
So I'm going to stop sharing, and we can maybe open it up to if there are any questions that you folks have.
Please put your questions in the chat. I want to just
I
quickly
covered a lot of stuff.
There was a lot of information, so please answer, you know, submit your questions and we'll get them to Kristen. Kristen, thank you for doing this, because, you know, your passion and your knowledge is a huge asset for the Northwest Corner to have you here.
Thank you very much. I read, let's see. Walking, right? There is a lot of studies about it. There are a lot of studies about exercise. You know, there are a lot of studies about moving and getting moving. Like I said, everything good for the heart is good for the brain. You know, you get the heart pumping that oxygen, pumping that blood up to the brain. So exercise, and if you can't get out, right? If you don't live in an area where it's safe to walk, for example, you know, you can do stuff in the house. I mean, it's very there. If you're not able to get out of your chair, you know, we even encourage, obviously, people who've been diagnosed to be as active as possible, you know, chair exercises or chair dances or things like that. So whatever, gentle movement, whatever we can do to get that heart pumping is really good for us.
I see a question here about that Renee has missed some of this. Will this be available on YouTube or somewhere? We will have a recording, Renee, so you can contact us and we can send you that recording. Now, what time of the day is the Lime Rock Park? Everything will begin right around 12:30 on Sunday, September 19th.
So if you get there by 11:30, we're going to have this beautiful ceremony, probably at 12 or 12:30. But you can walk ahead of time, you can walk after. Really trying to just know also that we have 7 walks across the state, and if some of you are from New York, you might be closer to another walk in New York. You know, we have 600 walks across the country. So we're part of the larger Alzheimer's Association organization, but we are the Connecticut chapter. So what we're doing is really trying to stay as safe as possible. Last year, we walked in our neighborhoods, so we weren't able to gather. So this year, to just be as safe, we're doing all the COVID protocols. We're really encouraging social distancing. We're really encouraging people to walk at different times, right? It doesn't all have to be a crowded start line. We're not going there this year. And, you know, we're having a lot of hand washing stations and various things. And when you raise $100, you get a t-shirt mailed to you. So there's no t-shirt pickup area, which we used to have. It's going to be try to have a lot of it hands-free, you know, which is safe. And registration, we're encouraging that to happen beforehand. And all you need to do is go to alz.org/walk, and you can put in your own website. Good question. Supposed to arrest, delay, or reverse? not supposed to reverse. Supposed to add some, potentially keep you at a plateau. Okay, give you more time. I would say essentially Aduhelm is to give you more time, but also it's got to be for the people in the early stage, and it doesn't work for everyone, right? Not every drug works for everyone. So keep your eye on that. More and more people are finding out about it, are learning about it. Please talk to your healthcare provider. That is where we're suggesting, because we didn't approve the drug and we don't give out the drug, right? So please reach out to your healthcare provider and your doctor and find out what their stance is on Aduhelm, where there has to be a certain infusion centers, right? Because you have to get an infusion. It's like we say, it's another tool in the toolbox, right? It's something else, but it's finally something that can do something to give you some more time. That's how we're looking at it.
I will ask a quick question to you, Kristen. As a caregiver, you were your mom's caregiver. Is there any one thing or just a little hit or miss that you can give to us as a caregiver, as a direct caregiver?
You opened up a can of worms. Are you guys going to be here for more hours? Because we can just chat about all sorts of good stuff. Yeah, I would share that, the biggest thing that I learned, and there were a lot of mistakes along the way, was to really go into her reality and not argue. So it's really important that people realize that it's the disease, right? It's not the person who's being difficult. It's the disease that's creating a difficulty for the person. So if they insist that today is Wednesday, and it's not Wednesday, and they're getting agitated and upset, go where they are. If they feel it's Wednesday, okay, it's Wednesday. But today we're going to do a Tuesday activity. Throw it that way. You really have to be creative. Because the whole point is to reduce agitation, right? The whole point is to make sure that they know that they're okay. All right, so I'll give you my 2 S's. I'm sorry, and you're safe. I'm sorry, whatever is happening with them, right? I'm talking about an agitated state, like a behavioral situation. They're upset with something. They're not feeling well, whatever's happening, and it's coming out with anger. An example with my mom. I remember her, I was visiting as much as I can. We had her placed in a nursing home, family choice. She had a heart attack at 62. So we wanted her to be in a place where she'd be safe and also where she could have some activities and people around. And so we chose that. And I remember one day I came to visit. She said, "You haven't been here. Where have you been?" And I'd been there every day that week. But instead of saying, "No, Mom, I've been here," because there's no way to prove it to her or show it to her, she feels I haven't been there. So I knelt down to her level, because it's good to get on eye level. And I said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I made you feel bad. But you know what? I am working really hard at my job, and you'd be proud of me." So it's hit and miss. It's trial and error, right? To see what could potentially work. And so that did, quiet her down, because I said, "I'm sorry. Also, you're safe. Whatever's happening, the car backfires and it's outside and it sounds like a bomb. That's scary, right? They see something on television. Always be careful what you have people watch with dementia, because sometimes they believe that what's on TV is really happening in their lives. So my mom thought there was a bomb, there was bombing. So me telling her she's safe. "You're safe, Mom. You're safe." So I like my 2 S's, the safe and the sorry.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Anyone else? We're going to be open for another minute or so.
If you have any questions about anything, just fire them away, you guys. Let me put some stuff in the chat. I'm going to put the 800 number, okay? Helpline in the chat. Our website is alz.org/CT, which is our Connecticut website. If you wanted to find out more about research, I took the slide out, but this is interesting. I don't know how many of you guys take apps down on your phone. Go to the App Store and get apps, but there is an app that's called the Science Hub app, the Alzheimer's Association Science Hub app, and you can find out all sorts of things about what we're researching, who we're funding, what the latest news stories are about Aduhelm, for example. So if you want to download that app, that's quite interesting as well.
Kristen, do you see the question from James? When you transition to a nursing home, do you think it was more stressful or less stressful to continue visiting your loved one and thereby giving her a connection to the world she had left? I visit frequently, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
So this is just my personal opinion. I am big into giving the person with dementia as much love as you possibly can. And if love comes in the form of a visit, absolutely. But don't stress yourself out. And here's the point. We as caregivers need to take care of ourselves. That's in part why we have 90, I think, support groups. You know, just being in a support group and just sharing your information, just even listening or venting, or that worked with your wife, really? Because maybe I'll try that trick with my wife, or this comment worked, or this type of anything, undergarment, you know. There's so much information that's passed around in the support group. It's really crucial. I visited my mom as much as I could until it was really super painful for me. And there are some times when it was too hard. And I went into self-preservation mode, and I didn't visit for a day or two. And I think it would have been better for me to go when I'm better, right? Because I feel that people who have dementia sometimes can't comprehend what you're saying as early as you say it, because their brains are obviously slower. There's plaques and tangles in there, but they can feel your essence. So if you come towards them with love and ease, and you're not all, oh my God, I just had a horrible day, or I'm so upset with this. You come towards them with more of that. They might mirror your essence, or they might mirror your mood, for example. I remember one time we were in the nursing home. I was with my mom. My brother had texted, I'm going to be late on the visit. And he had like this horrible day at work, and he had horrible traffic. He walked in with a scowl. Oh, and I said, you turn around, go outside and try this again. Like I was his mom, right? But I'm like, we don't want that kind of anger and agitation to come at mom. So he calmed himself down and came back with a smile, or just, you know, not get rid of the furrowed brow. So I think it's better to go as much as you can, take care of yourself. And talking about the old days is good, you guys. Talking about the old days, right, team? That's just so helpful, I think, because it's a good tool to use for if there's an agitation, or if you need to redirect because they're upset about something. I'll tell you a story. Since we're in storytelling mode, right? Tell stories. So we have these groups called GAP groups, and they're called Giving Alzheimer's Purpose. And it's usually a couple. So one person has dementia and one person does not. It's the caregiver, you know, the spouse, or the caregiver, the maybe sometimes a child, and an adult child. And so we went out, and we wanted to keep things really calm, and we asked for like a private room to have lunch, and there was like 4 or 5 couples, and quiet, private. And what happened was they overbooked, and they put another table next to us that was really quite noisy. And as you might know, in dealing with this, you want to kind of keep distractions to a minimum, right? And kind of keep noise and everything to a minimum. So this doctor who had dementia sat down, and it started to get loud. And he said, "This chair is awful. This chair is just the worst." Okay. So we stood up. Let's try the new chair. So we slid another chair out and pulled another chair, sat down. How's that one? This is all so bad. My back and this and the legs. This is this is an awful situation. So his wife got up, and we traded with the wife's chair. This is not good. And I said, Doc, where did you go to medical school again? Because I forgot. I'm so curious about how you started your residency. Guess what, guys? It wasn't about the chair at all. He was agitated. It was too loud. There was something happening inside him that made him not feel good. So distract with something from the old days. And that's a great example that I have, because it actually worked. I'll give you a bunch of examples that didn't work. But it's all trial and error, right? And also, I would suggest that you forgive yourself if you make a mistake. If you say something you shouldn't have said, or you lose your patience. We're human. Caregiving is really, really hard. I contend it's the hardest job, certainly the hardest job I ever had. I'm not a parent. I know parenting is hard, but I think caregiving and watching your person go slowly is really, really hard.
Well, I think that was a great point about behavior being such a big form of communication with someone. So thank you
Right.
for that.
Yeah.
All right, a few more, anybody else before we start to wrap up and thank Kristen? All right, everybody. Kristen referenced a lot today about lifestyle interventions. So please be on the lookout. We are going to be doing a wellness series here at Gear Village Senior Community. So there's going to be a lot of exciting things that we're going to really tie into the lifestyle interventions and wellness. Everything Kristen said today, I learn something new every time I hear Kristen. So it's always an amazing, amazing experience. I couldn't thank Kristen enough for doing this today. And please give me a call and make sure you reach out to us here at Gear Village Senior Community. If you do need anything or you have any questions, you can reach me again at 860-824-3819 or thogan@gearcares.org. And I'm thinking I've probably talked to most of you, so I'm hoping that most of you have my information. So thank you so much. And if I don't see any more, thank you everyone so much for attending.
Everybody. I'd love to meet you at the walk on the 19th.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.